If you think talking about mental illness is scary, imagine what happens when we don't talk about it. Join the conversation. Visit letstalkstigma.org.
Hello, I'm Karl Shallowhorn, board member of the Erie County Anti-Stigma Coalition, and on behalf of the coalition, I would like to welcome you to the 9th in our series of Facebook Live events, this time focusing on the state of stigma, managing the anxiety of the holiday season. We're in the midst of the holiday season, which has proven to be challenging to many of us for all kinds of reasons. We're dealing with the ever-present COVID pandemic, as well as the strain of its economic consequences, including supply chain issues that affect not only consumer goods, but food items as well. And our families can also contribute to these challenges. The holidays have historically been a time that creates stress, which in turn creates anxiety. This feeling can result in symptoms such as depression, substance use, trouble sleeping, and difficulty concentrating, among others. This leaves many people feeling like they have no way to cope and subsequently suffer as a result. So today we're going to be exploring this topic with three individuals who have a different perspective. Before I introduce our panelists, here are a couple of housekeeping rules. Our program is for 1 hour. During this time, if you have a question or comment, please type it into the comment box and we'll respond accordingly. Today, I'm joined by first Megan Andrews. Megan is the Assistant Director of Child and Family Services Employer Assistance Program. She has worked with the program for the past 7 years during a period of significant program expansion. She's committed to supporting West New York by providing high quality, easily accessible services. She's an experienced social work administrator and clinician with a history of work in higher education, serving on the faculty of the University of Buffalo School social work program for more than 20 years. At Child and Family Services, Megan is responsible for providing operational oversight for all EAP accounts and clinical services. Welcome, Megan. Next, we're joined by Moira Kelly. Moira is a certified psychiatric rehabilitation practitioner. She has worked at West New York Independent Living for over 25 years. She was the director of Mental Health Peer Connection, a division of the agency from its inception in 1997 until May of 2021. Currently, she is the Behavioral Health Peer Liaison. She's been very successful in meeting the needs of those with behavioral health issues in West New York through obtaining millions of dollars of funding for peer support services. She expanded Mental Health Peer Connection from a 3-person program into a 30-person full-time peer provider agency. Her success is based on being a peer and providing services in the community which she herself would want to have. In her current role, she serves Erie, Niagara, Genesee, Wyoming, and Orleans counties. Through listening to the needs of those impacted by behavioral health issues and advocating on a systems level to improve the quality of the life of those she serves.
Hi.
And finally, we have Elizabeth Holt. Elizabeth is the Director of Outpatient Operations for Horizon Health Services. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Psychology and Spanish from Canisius College and a Master of Social Work from the State University of New York at Buffalo. She's a licensed clinical social worker with over a decade of experience working in behavioral health, hospital, and social service agencies. She's skilled in clinical operations and personnel management with demonstrated ability to align teams with strategic initiatives focused on patient experience and strong staff morale. She's trained in EMDR, fluent in Spanish, and experienced in research, statistical analysis, and literature review. Elizabeth was a recipient of the Buffalo Business First IDIA Inclusion, Equity, Diversity, Awareness Award in 2020 and has been part of the Horizon Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council since 2014. Welcome, everyone, to our Facebook Live. So I want to begin by asking a question of all of you. And the question is, aside from the reasons I talked about earlier in my opening remarks, Why do you think there's so much anxiety over this time of year? What are we going through right now? So I'll just start maybe with you, Megan, since I see you first.
Yeah, thanks, Karl, and thank you everybody for joining in today. I think this is such a great and important topic to talk about. I think first we have to kind of define what is anxiety, and it's really it's when we notice that our neurological systems are kind of on high alert when we're anxious. We're perceiving some level of threat. And I think especially with this holiday season and what you talked about, what we're finding is the normal, trying to get back to the normal, trying to be it all, do it all, buy it all, that, is kind of overflowing our cup already. We're finding that a certain level of anxiety kind of allows us to perform. But at some point when our neurological system's on overload, what we find is our performance ability reduces. So I think just we're already kind of piled high with kind of those perceived threats, and the holiday season and the desire to kind of get back to normal is just overloading us. So.
And what do you think, Maura?
So my experience has been that given all this, the surrounding issues that cause anxiety, the COVID economic issues, the stressors, holidays add to that. I know for me, when I put expectations on how things should be and how they really are, or I look at past experiences that might not be positive or positive, and I fear that they're going to happen again, they're going to relive themselves, or have these expectations that are not appropriate or not realistic, and I'll be disappointed. And I think holidays bring back a lot of memories of positive and negative things that stir up feelings that cause anxiety. It just stirs up stuff for me. And I don't think it's just people with a diagnosis of mental illness. I think we all go through it this time of year, and it's nothing uncommon. It's very, very common. I think I'm not alone in these experiences. So.
And Elizabeth, what about you? Maybe from a clinical perspective.
Yeah, I think Maura makes an excellent point that I was planning to touch on. For many people, holidays are a time of celebration, but holidays are also prominent reminders of past trauma. This can include things like loss of a family member, reminders of family conflict, maybe arguments from years past, substance use. So this can create a lot of dissonance for people. A time that's supposed to be happy and joyful also brings up challenging feelings. We're also 2 years into a pandemic, so we'd be remiss if we don't mention that. During the COVID-19 pandemic, 23% of adults in the US reported that they started going to counseling more often, and 40% are planning to go to counseling more in the coming year. So we're seeing that people are needing more help than ever.
So we're going to talk more about the addressing the need for anxiety a little bit later, or for these concerns. But once again, maybe we can kind of talk a little bit about how specifically when you think about the holidays, and of course, when I say the holidays, in our society, it's from Halloween, like November 1st, basically all the way through January 5th, or sometimes the post, season, sales and everything. So there's so many things involved that we deal with. So when it comes to that length of time that people are dealing with, like, why do you think there's such a difficult time understanding how to manage and cope?
I think we get a lot of conflicting messages. I think that we see media, social media telling us that you need to have this beautiful fairy tale experience in order for your holiday to be valid, right? And so when your reality doesn't match up to this ideal, I think it can create a lot of shame and stress for people.
I agree with Elizabeth. I think that the the disconnect from our expectations and the desire to kind of reach those expectations, and that are sometimes unrealistic, especially given the current state of things, and often from our history, like Maura, you mentioned, the historical context. So certainly, I think that disconnect between what we're expecting to happen and what does happen, can create that kind of discomfort, or at least aggravate it, or heighten it for some.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I also think sometimes it's been my experience, and the experience of other people we serve, is it sort of sneaks up on us. The holidays just sort of sneak up there, and all of a sudden we're in the middle of the holidays and we haven't done our preparation to prepare for the holidays. For me, it's prepare mentally, have a plan, have my toolkit of what I need to do to have a really happy, safe, calm, peaceful holiday for me. And so I think it just sneaks up on us. And for me, it's the thinking. My thinking gets in my way of the just what Megan and Elizabeth were talking about was, I should be cheery and have all my shopping done and, be giving out turkeys at the whatever. And, and in reality, it's like, wait a minute, let's look at reality for me. Let's look at, what I can do, what is in my control, what works for me to get through this and to enjoy this time and to master the event. So
Maura, I want to actually stay with you, and because of course, with your own lived experience, and you work with people who have, directly, in a peer capacity with people who have lived experience with the mental challenge. How do you see, you talked about it a little bit already, but how do you see the holidays affecting those with whom you work? I mean, like you said, there are additional stressors that people deal with that perhaps others can't relate to.
Right. So what I use and what we use at the Western New York Independent Living is this is a little pamphlet, and it's by Mary Ellen Copeland from the Copeland Center. And it's a wellness recovery action plan. And it's just a little trifold that, lists what are my wellness tools. Like one of mine is walking my dog, Ozzy, having soothing tea. I list my tools. What do I have that I can use in case of stressors? And this little pamphlet that you can reach out and call us and we can help you with it. It lists what are the stressors, or what's going to knock me off the edge of having negative experience, and how can I prevent that from happening? And what are the actions? It has written here, what are the actions I can take if things get, disheveled? And it's a plan. It's a plan before things might happen to get myself ready. And I know in my past, because of my trauma, I need this. I need a plan. I need to take care of myself. And like myself and everyone else that has mental health issues, we're resilient and we're resourceful. And if sometimes when we're in the moment, we're not thinking too clearly, but to have this orange little pamphlet, a plan in front of me and in front of people, this is an evidence-based practice that really works to prevent people from having negative experiences. So, and you can just, you can call Kevin at the number listed at extension 147, and he can give you a pamphlet. He can talk to you about it. And, if you really want to just get, a framework, for this trifold to have your plan, and then you can fold it back up. And if you're wearing dress pants, you won't be able to do this. But if you're wearing jeans, you could just stick this in your pocket and be on your way. So that's what we recommend here. So.
Karl, you're muted.
I apologize. So I'm definitely familiar, Maura, with the RAP plan, and the thing I love about it is that it's very proactive, right? In other words, it takes the power and it takes the ability to make the change and do something, so you feel, in a way, you're more in control. Because obviously, when you talk about holidays and so forth, there's so much that's out of our control. But if you have a plan, it gives you a way to respond, so you feel like you have maybe a little more control and maybe have less anxiety.
Right.
So I did get a question. Please remember, if you're watching, to put your questions in the comments. But I do have a question that just came through. Are any workplaces, and this might be for you, Megan, are any workplaces doing anything to support workers who are in a work environment that's more stressful at this time?
Yeah, from our perspective, at the Employee Assistance Program, we contract with organizations. And I can say for sure that there's 142 organizations out there that are engaged with us in getting services for their employees. And it is about being creative. And I do think employers are doing that. They're trying to find ways to meet their employees. They're giving us a call and they're asking us, what can we do? And I think that is so powerful and so important at this time, because we spend a lot of time at work. We spend an awful lot of time at work, and work can be another stressor for us, and especially, in the human service field, we can certainly talk. And I know Elizabeth and Maura can too. The need out there is high. We are seeing the phone calls. We are seeing and hearing the voices of people who are saying, my cup is overflowing, and I need help. And so a workplace is such a great opportunity to normalize. And so we have been doing a lot of education and education of employers. Employers are also asking us for this, which is just great to see. We've tried things like, doing kind of depression screening events or stress screening events. We did a stress screening event opened it up to all of our companies yesterday. And every single slot that we had open was filled, because people wanted to get a sense of, how do I evaluate my stress, begin to identify it, because that's the first step. And then what can I do about it? And so spending a little time talking about that with someone who's kind of outside of the norm just really normalizes that for everybody. So I think workplaces are a great place to do that. And I do see a lot of employers really trying to be creative, trying to find new ways to normalize this conversation, which is what we're all trying to do today, decrease the stigma. That's the power, but there's a lot of power in the workplace.
Definitely. And of course, I know, your EAP program offers, like you said, specific workshops and so forth. The MHA, where I work, we have programs as well. So, and it's more common for workplaces to be forward thinking, because we know that if your workforce is healthy, mentally and physically, they're going to be more productive. I mean, just kind of makes sense. So I think that investment that the employers take in their employees will pay off, many times over in that respect. So, hey, Maura, can you please offer that number again for the pamphlet? I think we had a question come through. Someone asked.
Sure. Kevin Smith is the director of Mental Health Peer Connection, and I talked to him yesterday, and I said, "Hey, Kevin, I'm going to be on this," and most of the staff here are trained in wellness recovery action plans. And if you just give Kevin a call, he can help you in getting a pamphlet or even talking to you, working through it with you, or we could even have an ad hoc group for people to come in and share with each other. But that's at 836-716-836-0822, extension 147. And Kevin would be more than happy to help get what you need to be prepared for this and stay prepared for this, what we're experiencing now. So,
thank you, Maura. Liz, I want to get back to you, Elizabeth. So when it comes to a person who may be struggling with anxiety, any time of the year, but certainly now, how do they get the help they need? What suggestions do you need? I know sometimes for someone, you hear these stories of folks who they may even be interested in getting help, but they don't know how to approach it, or they may be afraid to, for whatever the reason. What would be your tips or suggestions on how to take that step to getting professional help?
It's a great question. First off, I want to say I'm a proponent of therapy for everyone. We all see a primary care physician to take care of our physical bodies. Well, what about our mental and emotional wellness? To speak more specifically about anxiety, anxiety manifests in many ways. Megan touched on this earlier. Excessive worry that's difficult to control, rapid heart rate, sometimes even avoidance of people, situations, places that can cause increased worry. If you're experiencing any type of worry that's difficult to control, it's important to get the supportive counseling. There are both medication and non-medication interventions to treat these symptoms. I'm a big proponent of learning some simple techniques to slow down hyperarousal. So, our systems were designed to be built to flee from danger, right? If a car is speeding toward us, we know to get out of the way. If a dog is chasing us, we know to run. These are natural instincts. Our heart rate increases, which sends oxygen to our muscles and gives us a boost of strength. But sometimes in modern society, this response becomes overly active. And that's more likely to occur if you've experienced some type of trauma in your past. So this feeling can start to almost generalize so that you experience a fear response, maybe even in the absence of danger. So to slow this down, there are many common techniques. Deep abdominal breathing would be one. Visualization of a peaceful image. For some, it's prayer. For others, it's mindfulness. I really love that Maura talked about RAP planning and kind of coping ahead. All great techniques to manage anxiety.
So, and it's funny because one thing I always talk about, because I teach a program called Mental Health First Aid. I know I'm pretty sure all of you are aware of it, but the Mental Health First Aid program teaches about mental health and what to look for, and it covers pretty much the primary mental health disorders and substance use and so forth. And one of the things we always say is that certainly early intervention is key, and knowing how to identify when you're feeling the symptoms. And so I think for many people, if you are experiencing anxiety for the first time, you may think it's physical, like you said. So if a person is, like I said, experiencing that rapid heart rate, and they think, well, what do they do? Would you recommend even going to a primary care physician, Elizabeth?
Absolutely. Primary care physicians are getting much better about screening and referring their patients to treatment. I can give an example of right now, logging in to talk to all of you. I started to feel my heart beat more quickly, my palms sweat, right? That's my system giving me this alert signal. Now, if I let my thoughts tell me I'm in danger, this isn't safe, I'm going to humiliate myself, that can just take over. So instead, being able to do some quick focused breathing, some positive self-talk, that can turn that process right around. So that's kind of a real life example for you.
Thanks. And that's great because that puts a real face on what we go through. And what you're describing, Elizabeth, is what we all go through. Everybody experiences anxiety to some degree. I think it just depends on the duration and the intensity of the symptoms, and that it's not uncommon. I think this thing we want to let people know it's not uncommon. So, and it's okay. Megan, as far as the workplace goes, and we've talked a little bit about the workplace, what should employers be looking for in their staff? Of course, you might have a manager or even an owner if it's a smaller company, or even a colleague for that matter. What should they be looking for someone who might be struggling in terms of just work-related issues that might come up?
Yeah, I think that managers and supervisors are in a great position. Coworkers are in a great position to notice when folks are really struggling. And anxiety can kind of manifest itself in a couple of different ways in the workplace. One of them is underfunctioning. And so we kind of see people kind of shutting down, not doing the work, not performing at the level they're normally doing. So the first and most important thing is noticing. The other kind of on the flip side of that, you see people who might overfunction when there's a high anxiety and that hyper alert state that Elizabeth was talking about, that they'll overfunction. You'll see them jumping in. You'll see them, trying to find a way, like we talked about earlier, to control this. So the most important thing is noticing that change in people's behavior. And then the second thing is having a conversation about it, is talking about it, is saying, hey, I've noticed. And really being curious, not judging, but very curious about what's going on for that person, and what, how could, we kind of, help, or just even taking a little bit of that off their plate, and allowing them that space to say, oh, someone else noticed that I'm over functioning. Someone else noticed that I'm under functioning. Maybe I need to take a little bit of an inventory around that and evaluate what level of support, what resources do I need? Do I need to enact my wellness plan? What is it that I need to do? And it gives people an opportunity to pause. And I think managers and supervisors, I think, are shifting in that direction. I think just the general talk about mental health in the community has been helping. And I think on micro levels, we need to do that with one another more often, checking in, saying, hey, I noticed this. Is everything all right? Do you need anything? For overfunctioners, you want to say, okay, so let's prioritize. For underfunctioners, we want to say, okay, so what do you need to do so you can get back to, the level of performance that you were at previously? Do you need some time off to address other issues? Do you need, to take a moment for yourself? Or do you need, other resources or other, support here at work? What is it that we can do to help to get you back to where you were? But it's noticing those changes and talking about those changes. Those are the two most important things that employers can do.
So let's talk about taking time off. I'm glad you said that, because it's so interesting, Megan. For so many years, we've used the term mental health days, right? Where in the past, people would say, "Oh, forgive me, I just need a mental health day." Of course, you would kind of just laugh it off. Well, people, I think, are more serious when they say that now. What is your feeling about that in the workplace, as far as a legitimate work-related excuse, and how would a person approach their employer if they felt they needed a day to take care of their mental health when they may be in a situation where they're not sure how it would be taken, or if they even wanted to disclose that?
Right. I think that's a great point. You do see a shift with employers over the last several years, shifting from sick time and vacation time to paid time off, generalizing it. And I think that has been a great step, because I think we don't necessarily have to disclose the purpose or reason for the day off. I think that approaching it with your employers, I think the more the conversation is normalized, the more it becomes part of our everyday, I think the easier it's going to be to address that. I do think people need to know where they work. They need to know what they don't want to be put in a position where they're sharing more information than they feel comfortable with either. And I think it's okay for people to say, I need a timeout. I need a pause. I need to take a step away for tomorrow. I think it's important to be planful about it. I think, again, getting ahead of it, kind of being, planful about it, even with our wellness plans, is better, thinking, what, I know it's going to be, I have a lot going on for the holiday and I need to plan to have a day off. I think we can do a lot to that, to be responsible to our employer too, because there's a lot of work out there, and we are all, we've all heard about the employee shortage. So we have to be responsible about it, and planful about it, but recognize that just like when you have to take a day off because you can't expose other people to a physical health, concern, you have to also recognize that you can't come to work if you have to take care of yourself, because you can't pour from an empty cup.
Great. Thank you so much. That's a wonderful response. So if you're just tuning in, I'm Karl Shallowhorn from the Erie County Anti-Stigma Coalition, and I'm joined by Moira Kelly from Western New York Independent Living, Mental Health Peer Connection, Megan Andrews, Assistant Director of Child and Family Services Employee Assistance Program, and Elizabeth Holt, Director of Outpatient Operations for Horizon Health Services. Remember, you can visit our website at letstalkstigma.org to take the pledge to end stigma. Also, if you're connected with a business, organization, or faith community, you can become an organizational member of the Anti-Stigma Coalition. You can find information for this on the website under the Members tab. And remember, if you have a question that you would like to present to the panel, please type it into the comments box and we'll be sure to relay it on to them. So this is another question for everyone regarding stigma, which of course is a big reason why we're here. How do you think it plays a part in people feeling that even they may want help, they may be reluctant to reach out? That's a common thing that we hear, is that people don't want to reach out because of stigma. So what can we do about that? How can we help those that might say want to get that help but not feel they can or be supported? Maura, what do you think?
Well, I've struggled with this in my lifetime, having a mental health issues. And today what I do is I talk about my mental health very openly and commonly and as regularly. It's part of my life. Just as some people are in a wheelchair, I have mental health issues, and I try to make it the norm, a normal part of the conversation. It's not something taboo anymore. It used to be, but like it's important to realize that when people reach out for help, it's a supreme act of valor that they are taking to take that risk to say, yes, I'm going to allow you in my heart of my life. And that takes a lot of courage and strength, and people should be commended for taking that step. I really believe so. I've done some research that indicates people with mental health issues, often many of them are trauma survivors, and people recover from that. People recover from trauma experiences, and learning the tools from professionals and from peers is crucial to living a vibrant life, not carrying around the baggage. And I think professional help helps have that person overcome what's preventing them from having a successful, healthy life. And I think talking about it, having conversations just as we are now, being open about it, for me, I don't see the negative in doing that. Some people, yes, but I think it's just, I make it part of it's in my family conversation. Outside my sisters, I have 4 sisters, and we all realized we were all taking the same antidepressant medication. And it was funny because we had never talked about that stuff before, but now we share something in common. Like we're not alone. Like, you don't have to be alone with anxiety or mental health issues. There's so many people have this mental health issues that can be talked about, supported, and it's just letting the door open a little bit and taking that supreme act of valor to take that risk and seek, just as any physical ailment, get the help needed, deal with it, and take it as prescribed. So I know Megan was talking about trauma, and Elizabeth was talking about trauma, and I know in holidays it's really important. As a trauma survivor, I know there's a fight and flight syndrome. I know I can leave any situation, and that's my right. And that gives me so much power to say, hey, I don't have to be in this situation. I can leave. I can take a step back. As for his work, hey, I can take a day off. I can take a paid time off. So there's so many options that we don't have to feel trapped in by just sharing with other people, having the conversation, taking that act, and getting maybe some tools that might help you. I don't see the negative in sharing anymore. Maybe I did 15 or 20 years ago, but I don't see negative consequences for saying, yes, I have this and I'm getting help for it and I'm addressing it. That is really powerful to my perspective.
Thank you, Maura. I'm going to come back to this question in a second, but I do want to ask one that's coming from the audience watching. And remember, if you do have a question, please type into the comment box and we'll pass it along. So the question is, can you offer suggestions for family members? And this goes to what you were saying, Maura. Can you offer suggestions for family members to support loved ones who have mental health struggles, especially in regards to large gatherings? Of course, we know that we're in the thick of it, right? This coming weekend, I bet it's probably going to be one of the biggest, along with the Christmas and the Kwanzaa and other holidays right around the next couple of weeks. Are going to be some of the biggest family gatherings. How do we help our loved ones that might be struggling, say, with anxiety? So, Liz, what do you say, maybe, or your clinical approach?
I think this is a great question. I think the simplest answer is probably in some ways the most difficult. As humans, our gut tendency is to want to fix something, but oftentimes what people need isn't advice or a solution that's handed to them. It's simply someone to listen and to validate, to be able to say, I hear what you're telling me. I'm here for you. How can I help? I think, many family members jump into fix-it mode and unintentionally alienate that family member or mishear what they're saying. So my simple answer is listen, validate.
Yeah, I would agree with Elizabeth. I think just being there and being with people matters, and it doesn't have to necessarily be physical. It can be a phone call. It can be a text message. There are other ways to connect, but connecting is the most important thing because, like Maura mentioned, we feeling alone kind of fuels the fire a little bit. Mm-hmm. And feeling like you're the only one, it fuels the fire. So, a quick text message, I'm here for you, an emoji, they can go a long way, but don't hesitate to pick up the phone either. And just say, I'm here.
Great. So if you don't mind, I'm actually going to move ahead to another question because I think this is one that is appropriate, kind of ties into our theme here. It seems to the way we're going. But as far as just general self-care tools, right? And we use this term all the time now, right? You hear about self-care and then, so certainly what is self-care and what would be some of the tools that people could use that might be experiencing anxiety this time of year? And I know, Elizabeth, you mentioned a few already, mindfulness and breathing and so forth. Anything you would want to add or suggest?
I think some things that get overlooked are the fundamentals. Sleep. If you're not getting enough sleep, it's very difficult to cope with the challenges that life throws at you. Staying hydrated, getting some exercise, even if that's a short walk around the block to get some fresh air. All those human needs that can just be so easily neglected in this fast-paced life that's filled with, social media, Zoom, everything we're inundated with, to remember just to get back to those fundamentals.
Excellent. Anything you might want to add to that, Megan?
Yeah, I think, all of those things. I think we have to be creative. I think one of the things that when people say create a self-care plan, people get worried. It's one more thing for me to do. Adding something to your to-do list isn't necessarily the best plan. Certainly, my best advice is consistency over intensity matters. If you take 2 minutes a day to do something that kind of turns your brain off a little bit, some people use meditation, some people use connecting with others, some people take a walk. Find what works for you. It's not the same as everybody else, but doing it consistently, even in small increments, is going to get you farther than taking one big leap every once in a while inconsistently.
Mm-hmm. And how about you, Maura? What do you do for yourself when it comes to self-care?
I look at it as what works for me doesn't necessarily work for someone else. So self-care is something I put in my life in general, and I go about life and then I identify, hey, I like this. Like, I really enjoy playing dominoes with my sister and my brother-in-law. That is self-care for me, and I like being included. Family members were asking what they can do for their person struggling with mental health issues. I like to be included in whatever the activity is, and that is self-care. Like, focusing on making a casserole for the dinner is, taking my mind off of myself and, focusing on following the directions. So it takes many different forms, but I think everyone is on a journey to say, hey, I like this and I'm going to do this again. This helps me. And it doesn't have to be solitary things. It can be with other people, and it can be looking out for positive things to do. I know I was in Niagara Falls and they had the zoo, the aquarium zoo people at this demonstration at the grammar schools. And I said, look at that. That is just such a great job. Like, what I just found so much positive in just discovering what makes me feel good, what makes me happy, and not regret any negative consequences of that. So I just think it's a discovery. It's an ongoing discovery, but not I'm going to spend the next hour thinking about all these things. It's a journey, just as our recovery is a journey in life. It just continues and grows, and our toolkit becomes bigger and bigger.
Excellent. Those are great responses from all of you. So I do have a question back to you, Liz. We've been talking a lot about symptoms and signs of anxiety and ways to respond and self-care. What about the triggers? Things that can cause anxiety. Of course, sometimes if a person knows their triggers or knows what triggers are, they may be more able to not experience them, or not, try to find ways to stay away from them or eliminate them from their lives. So what would be some triggers you would say?
Yeah, absolutely. As we kind of touched on earlier, I think the holidays are a time when a lot of memories are activated. So there are many ways this can happen, many cues associated with memory. Songs, activities, even smells can bring up memories of past thoughts. There's a way to illustrate it. A physician by the name of Dr. Siegel came up with a concept called the hand model of the brain. And I think it's a useful tool to understand a little bit better how our brains function. So if you take your hand and you think of your hand as being our brain, if you fold your thumb in, this would represent your amygdala, which is your stress survival response. That's all in the limbic system. When you fold your fingers down, this is your prefrontal cortex. That's impulse control, executive functioning, thinking ahead, decision making. What happens when your stress response, this amygdala, keeps firing is it sort of flips your lid, so to speak. If you've ever heard that term, flipping your lid, when your stress response keeps firing, your prefrontal cortex isn't working as it normally would. And this is what leads to the irritability you see associated with anxiety. People often forget one of the primary ways anxiety manifests is through irritability. That's why you're more likely to snap at a loved one when you're anxious. So if you think about that in combination with holidays, stress, responsibilities, you can imagine how this process gets activated. So I like that illustration because it really shows that what's happening inside of you is organic. It's deep inside the brain. And as we said earlier, I think, societal pressure plays a part. So we have to be realistic about the way we want to spend our holidays, what's safe for us, as Maura was saying. Where are your boundaries? When do I need to simply walk away?
And I like how you said that, how you tied in the physiological piece there, Elizabeth, because so oftentimes people believe or think that when it comes to any number of different types of behavioral health conditions, that they are sometimes even moral in nature, in terms of just because people do things that might not be seen as being proper. Maybe not so much with anxiety, but with other things. But the bottom line is people, based on what they see or what they see the person exhibiting, and thereby make a judgment. And we know those judgments can be very damaging as well when it comes to relationships and encountering whether it be family members, friends, or coworkers, or whatever. That's some important stuff to consider. So, Megan,
And
right
mentioning
now,
that, Carol, I just want to.
Oh, yeah, please. Yeah.
I think it's really important to know what Elizabeth explained is I didn't choose to have a mental health issues. I didn't choose. It's not my fault. It's like I had this, so I need to deal with it. But it's not like I didn't cause it, So like I'm not gonna like. It's really important not to blame yourself for feeling this feeling, and it's really crucial not to blame yourself. It's just that if you stop blaming yourself, I think you're on the road to recovery and say, hey, wait a minute, this is something that has happened to me and I can take steps to feel better.
Thank you so much for that, Maura. That statement alone goes a long way. I think when you talk about understanding one's own condition and why things are the way they are. Mm-hmm. And it's a reality for many people, but you're right. Many people do end up blaming themselves for something which they have no control over. So you're absolutely right. Megan, right now we are, getting ready for holiday parties, or have already had holiday parties at workplaces. And I know MHA is getting ready for one. I'm sure others are as well in this next week or so. So how do you support people that might not be comfortable in these situations? Of course, we have the whole other layer of COVID, right? That's a whole other thing now. We're dealing with holiday parties. But even without COVID, if someone is not fond of these gatherings and it might, prompt anxious feelings, how do you help them?
I think it's on both ends, because I think people want this over with. We all have said it. I've heard a million times people say, oh, I just wish this was over, this pandemic, and I just want to get back to normal. I just want to get past this. And we have to balance that with the fact that we have to be responsible. We have to be responsible to ourselves, but we also have to be responsible for those we care about and those we love. What's really important to do, and I would, highly recommend for everyone who's going into kind of an in-person gathering, determine for yourself what makes the most sense for you, your family, and those that you love. And the second thing I would ask is for everyone to be as generous as possible with one another. Seek curiosity over judgment. Judgment is that what you were talking about, Karl, that's what damages relationships. And relationships and connection are what supports us when we need help. So we want to do everything we can to preserve our relationships with others. And the best way to do it is to kind of suspend judgment for the time being. Be generous in our assumptions of why people are doing things. We don't know the whole picture. We don't know what's going on in someone's life. We don't know if there's someone that's ill, that they know if they might be experiencing, re-experiencing a past trauma. We don't know everyone's whole history. And we don't know what's going on in their lives right now. And so we have to kind of just sit back and make and be curious and, create and not create a story that lays judgment on others and the decisions that they're making. So we have to be generous with one another, be kind, and just assume everybody's doing the best they can right now.
I like how you said that, Megan. It reminds me of the the statement we talk about in the world of trauma-informed care, the question we ask is not what happened to you, not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. In other words, we know that with trauma, likely there's something in that person's past. I mean, Elizabeth talked about it, that could be triggering or could be causing a person to feel a certain way. And we can't either jump to conclusions or make assumptions based on what we're seeing. There's likely more than what meets the eye, right? That's what we often say. So we have to be sensitive to that. So, Maura, now we've talked a lot about managing anxiety and helping people with anxiety. What would you do, or how can you support someone, or how would you recommend to our audience to support someone who might be having anxiety during this time of year? What do you do for those you know, and what do you recommend for those with whom you work?
It's been my experience during the holidays. I've been in many holiday events where sometimes I'm like the fifth wheel, like I'm the special person that's invited to the party, like I'm the special one, and I don't like that. But what I see is helpful is when I'm included, when I'm a part of, when I contribute, am allowed to contribute to the festive activity or to whatever activity is going on, and I'm not just sitting apart from anyone because I choose not to. And sometimes I think, oh, I got to go to this thing, and I sit all alone. And there's people who know me that just encourage me, like, come on, get involved a little bit. They don't push, they just encourage. And I think to have a successful experience for me is to be a part of and not be separate, not to be alone, not to stigmatize myself and put that on me, and to honor each other's individuality, whether there's a label on it or not, and to enjoy each other's presence, or if it's not enjoyable, to have the freedom and the ability to leave. I always plan and as an exit strategy. And in my family, they take bets on how long I'm going to stay at an event, so it's just part of who I am. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
no, yeah, it helps. Yeah.
It's really important for me to be a part of and not separate and alone, but really included in the activities that I find important.
That's great. And you're right about that, because when people are excluded, then, well, aside from not feeling welcome, they're less likely to ask for help from those who have excluded them. So we know that's a big thing right there. And Elizabeth, anything else to add real quickly to that before we have our concluding comments?
I think Maura summed it up really well, and I'm glad that, Karl, you mentioned taking a trauma-informed care approach with people. Whether you're at a family gathering or you're in the grocery store and you see someone upset and yelling, rather than letting that judgment overtake you and saying, what's wrong with that person? Ask yourself instead, what has happened to this person? Approach everyone you encounter, especially during this time, with empathy, and positive regard.
Yes, empathy. The world could use a lot more empathy. I totally agree. Well, we've almost run out of time, but we do have time, though, for all of you to give some concluding comments on what we discussed today. But it's a great conversation. I really enjoyed this, and I hope our viewers have as well. So I'm going to give each of you an opportunity to take a couple minutes to maybe say a few things, maybe some takeaways for our audience. So how about, Megan, we start with you?
Great. First of all, I want to thank you for including us in this program. I have myself learned a lot from both Maura and Elizabeth, and you, Karl. New ideas, new ways of looking at this. And that's what we're all looking for. I think probably the thing that I would recommend is going to this holiday season, honoring yourself, taking moments to pause and turn your brain off a little bit if you can. Find ways, creative or any way to kind of take that step back and really be as consistent as possible with it. Don't feel like you have to, move mountains. One little step is all you need. First step is the most important, but doing small steps every day. And just be curious with one another, be kind and curious with one another. And I think we could ease some of the tensions for all of us. You have a lot of power. Each one of us has a lot of power to empathize, to be with, to care for. And giving to others also kind of fills our own cup a little bit too.
I like that, giving to others. There's a saying from a place that I come from. It says, "We only keep what we have by giving it away." So there's a little saying about that. Elizabeth, how about you? What would you like to say to share your takeaways?
I'm so happy to be here today. I'm grateful to our viewers for being with us. I want to encourage anyone who hasn't to take the pledge to end stigma. Pass it along to your friends, to colleagues. It's so important. I think young people are making tremendous progress combating stigma, the millennial generation, Generation Z. And lastly, I just want to say, anyone who's going through a difficult time, please make a phone call. That's really the first step. Call our patient engagement center. We have same-day appointments available, both in person, telehealth. And we'd love to meet with you. Get help today.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I do want to just say that it's great that, just to clarify, there's sometimes this belief that there aren't resources available because of what people hear and feel. There are resources. There are agencies that are accepting people and working with people, and we want to let individuals know that help is available. So we do try to stress that as well. Maura, you get the last word.
I just thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this very important conversation, and the conversation about stigma, and joining the conversation. I just want to stress that we are resilient, we're strong, and most importantly, we have choices. And I think anxiety happens when we feel stuck, and we always have choices. Like there's always choices. There's never just one option. There's always choices, and it's important to realize that, whether it's picking up the phone and calling a professional for help, or working on a rep plan, or leaving the event, or deciding who you're going to come with. We have choices, and we have power, and we are not powerless. We are people of resiliency, and there's so many good people that are experienced and knowledgeable and educated on how to help people in my situation or similar situations, that we can use those things and really seize the day and seize the moment and enjoy the holidays. That's a should, so do whatever you want on the holidays. I'm going to try to enjoy them. So
thank you, Maura. And I just have to say, resilience is a great word to kind of use, and to say that we're all able to withstand things that perhaps we don't even think we can. We all have that power, like you said. We all have power and resilience. So thank you for those two excellent words. Well, as a reminder to our audience, we need you to take the pledge to end stigma by going to our website. Like Elizabeth said, it's called letstalkstigma.org. If your organization would like to join us in our cause, there's information on the website as well. You can click on the members tab to find out how. Together, we can make this happen, folks, and we want to do this. So once again, I'd like to thank our panelists, Moira Kelly from Western New York Independent Living, Mental Health Peer Connection, Megan Andrews from Child and Family Services Employee Assistance Program, and Elizabeth Holt from Horizon Health Services. I'd also like to thank the folks from behind the scenes, Mike Telesco from Telesco Creative Group for his technical support, Matt Smith, chair of the Anti-Stigma Coalition Outreach Committee, Carol Doggett from the Mental Health Advocates of West New York, and Karen Kershesky from KKPR Buffalo for their support as well. Be sure to tune in on January 19th to our next Facebook Live on the state of stigma, when we'll address keeping communication channels open for high school students. So on behalf of the Erie County Anti-Stigma Coalition, until next time, I'm your host, Karl Shallowhorn. Happy holidays, be safe, and be well.